president of Money Metals Exchange, which is the very best place to get gold and silver. It's who I personally use. And I have the president of the company, Stefan Gleason, and he's going to talk about the advantages of silvers, the pitfalls to avoid, and just have a great discussion today. So Stefan, thank you so much for being on with me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, thank you so much. You know, off the air, you and I were talking about how people call me Stefan and call you Stephen, even though our names are spelled differently. So kind of funny that way. So, well, hey, I really appreciate you being on with me today, and I want to be respectful of your time. So as someone who deals in silver and has a wide range of knowledge when it comes to metals and money and inflation, why would someone want to have a portion of their assets or money in metals like silver?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, silver and gold are money, and they've historically held their value over centuries and millennia. And that is still the case. These are assets that will always have utility and will always have value. And in a world where we're moving towards electronic money, and we have dramatic intervention by governments and by central banks, usually in a manner that creates more inflation, more debt, more instability. Gold and silver is a foundational hard asset that can be held outside of the financial system. That is a way of diversifying from the risks that seem to be arrayed and maybe increasing in the economy and in the markets. And so gold and silver is a non-correlated asset to these other asset classes. It's money unto itself. It doesn't have counterparty risk. It's literally not somebody else's liability. When you have a dollar bill or have some other financial asset, there's counterparty risk, and it is not payment or money in and of itself. And gold and silver have that quality of being money, and it's a great way of hedging yourself from inflation and from stock market instability and getting it out of the banks and out of the financial system. And so we believe that everybody should have at least some physical gold and silver. Silver is the most attainable. It's probably the most exciting of the metals. We can get into that. But most people don't have any, which is really amazing. 100 years ago, it was embedded in our culture. Our money, our circulating money was gold and silver. And it's now been demonetized, and we have paper money and all the things that have flowed from that, all the problems. But we're seeing a reawakening of people going back to the monetary metals as a bona fide and a significant way of hedging yourself and protecting yourself from many threats that are out there.
Yeah, I think for me, this last year, the thing that really opened my eyes, especially as the government was printing more money than they've ever printed in history, was the fact that it was real money, right? These pieces of silver were real money, and it was metal that was going to be here in 100 years. It was money that was used, thousands of years ago.
Right. And
these fiat currencies, they almost never last, right? And it's not to scare people into buying metals. It's a reality that inflation is coming. It's been here, and ever since we went off the gold standard under President Nixon, the value of the dollar just loses every single year. Yeah. And so if you're stacking Benjamins, they're becoming Andrew Jacksons really quickly.
Right.
And yet that metal, it has weight to it, has heft to it, has buying power, and it has utility behind that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the realness of the money is something that, whether the people listening to this buy in and ever need to tap into that money, it's something like I get down on my hands and knees and I play with it with my children. I tell them, don't scratch it. I do want it to have, it look nice. But at the end of the day, that's something I could pass on to the next generation and the next generation. It's just going to continue to add value, but it will be real 100 years from now with my grandchildren.
Yeah, and of course, nowadays, paper money doesn't even have interest. So, one of the knocks on gold and silver was it doesn't pay interest. Well, neither does cash. In fact, it loses principal because it gets devalued, and you get no interest. So, I have a 11-year-old. He used to be a big spender. Whenever he got money, he would go out and want to buy something. And then we moved to a little system where he can opt to be paid in silver for the chores that that he's able to be paid for. Some he has to do automatically, but what was interesting was he started getting excited about accumulating this form of money, and he started becoming more of a saver. It was really remarkable because he recognized somehow that this has more value, and he saw that he was seeing the price move around. So that was kind of exciting, but it made him more of a saver. And I think that, that's kind of one of the things that happens is you realize this is money in and of itself, and it retains value. There's beauty, of course, but the history, and it just seems more substantial, and it is. Time.
Yeah, in January, one of the key things that I shared with my community when I first introduced them to your company and the fact that I was buying silver, I'm usually pretty private about my money, but I felt like this was something I needed to share with my community, was this idea of, if you're not very disciplined at saving, or you don't have lots of money to save every month, silver might actually be a great tool for saving, because if you get an itch or a want or a desire and you want to go spend that money, you've got to cash that coin in and sell it, and find a buyer. And most people won't do that. And so what happens is they'll just continue to collect more and more. And then I pointed out the fact that even if you could only buy, let's say 3 coins a month, around $100 a month, at the end of the year, that's 36 coins. And at the end of a decade, that's 360 coins. And in the future, those 360 coins are going to be real. They're going to have value, utility, and they're going to, in most cases, the market trends upward, right? We can't predict where it will be, but it does trend upward. And so I think you're right. I think it's a great way of saying, where could I save that I'm not going to be tempted to spend that money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, the price of gold and silver going up is in many ways a reflection of the value of the paper money or the fiat money going down. And so it's a way of hedging against that. The other thing I noticed with my son is that he also wanted to work more. He was more excited about doing his chores, and he was less excited about frivolously spending on Pokemon cards or whatever. So anyway, I not to simplify it, but I think kids get it. Actually, it's kind of interesting because, you say, well, here's this paper money, and you look at how much the price has changed over the last 100 years, where an ounce of gold used to, or I'll just use an ounce of silver, was $1, and then now it's $28 or $26, something like that. If you had dollars and these paper notes, they wouldn't have changed. The massive amount of losses that you would have had if you held one of those dollars as opposed to 1 ounce of silver 100 years ago. So anyway, I think people are moving in that direction. We're seeing, especially in the last year, and even in the last few months, we're seeing really an explosion of additional interest. It's still a very small market. People are coming back to precious metals, but it's still a very small number of people, even though it's increased dramatically. And I think that's a good thing. People are looking at options and taking action.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you're much more intelligent in silver and money and things than I am, but I've been developing a theory over 2020 as I've observed the market, and my gut tells me that there's 2 new emerging hedge vehicles, and maybe new is the wrong word, but traditionally when people think about risk or hedging against inflation or devaluation of the dollar, they think of gold. But I've been watching this, like gold kind of losing some of its, how do I say this? Losing the mental real estate with people. But it seems like silver is picking up that mind space, and also digital currency like Bitcoin, right? And I see silver as an asset that, as I've studied it, people realize that it's undervalued compared to gold, and yet it still has a lot of the same utility and use And then I see people getting interested in Bitcoin and digital currency because it can't be as easily manipulated by the Fed or other currencies like a fiat currency. So maybe could you talk a little bit about that as far as like silver and gold and Bitcoin taking up real estate in people's minds?
Yeah, so it's free market money. So it's not as, and that includes Bitcoin. It's not susceptible to government intervention. It's not, well, it can be, that they may try to crack down on it, but they don't print it. They can't easily manipulate it. It's more free market driven commodity money, including Bitcoin, although there are key differences, of course, because that's not tangible. But in terms of gold versus silver, you're absolutely right. Silver is, first of all, historically way undervalued versus gold. It was more undervalued a year ago than it is today, but it's still significantly undervalued on a historical basis. It used to be a 15-to-1 ratio in price. Right now, it's about 60-to-1, 65-to-1, somewhere in there. It was over 100-to-1 a year ago during that big, crisis or immediate, market liquidity thing that happened last March, and that was kind of the all-time. That was a 3,000-year low in the gold silver ratio, or high, I should say, in the gold silver ratio. So if you bought some silver right then, that would have been the ultimate best buying opportunity ever compared to gold. But what's happening with silver, and why I like silver more than gold, not only is it historically undervalued, as we just discussed, but it's actually more rare than gold above ground. There is way more gold than there is silver above ground. In the earth, it's about a 10-to-1 ratio. So there's more silver in the earth.
More silver than gold in the earth. Okay.
Yeah, above ground, there's actually more gold than silver. And that's because silver has been consumed, and it's also been formally demonetized, although that's kind of changing. It's sort of reversing, at least from an investment standpoint. But it used to be the circulating money, and it was hoarded by governments because it was part of the coinage. And it was also held for strategic reasons, for military and other applications. But silver had been demonetized, and there's actually only about 2 billion ounces of silver above ground in recoverable form, whereas there's about 6 billion ounces of gold, which is really so silver's more rare than gold. But one of the other things about silver that I really like is that it's got both the economic and the monetary cases both working for it simultaneously. And supply is also an issue, which we could get into the supply and elasticity, because it's a byproduct of other mining, which makes it harder for silver to come out. If silver prices go up, the copper price is what drives the mine production. So more silver doesn't get mined. But anyway, putting that aside, silver is exciting because of the monetary aspects and the investment aspects, but also because of the explosion in other uses, including solar, high tech. It's electric vehicles, biocides. Silver has unique properties that make it very valuable, and it's usually used in small amounts. It's the best conductor of electricity of all the metals. It's the best reflector of light, and it's the best natural biocide. It kills 400 something microorganisms, and so it's used in medical applications. It's on airline trays. It's on dental instruments, sprays, things like that, because of its antibiotic characteristics. And so you have the exploding industrial uses at the same time as you have the increased interest as an investment metal. So that's kind of a perfect storm. It can work against it when you have an economic slowdown. The economic side goes down, but right now things are really heating up again. And then the monetary side is heating up, and the supply is actually declining on an annual basis. So there's kind of this, scenario building for silver that makes it very possible we could see some big moves. That said, silver is very volatile. So people that are watching prices of silver and gold versus gold is kind of an even keel ride. Silver is much more up and down. If you're faint at heart, you might you don't get too much of it if you get nervous, because people it makes it exciting, but it also can be scary if you have too much of it and you're sensitive to the price fluctuations.
Yeah, I'm personally a buy and hold. Hope I never have to really tap into it. Like for me, I look at like going back to my question about Bitcoin. Like for me, I'm looking at, okay, if things continue the way that they are, then Bitcoin could be a great opportunity for people in my community, right? But let's say that the power goes out, the electricity goes out, right? So what's my backup as far
Right.
as if things get really, really bad? And for me, it's silver, right? More than gold. Because when it comes to like trading, like let's say that you were a young family desperate for diapers and formula and food, and you have a bartering transaction, and all you have is one gold coin worth $3,000. And they're
Right.
like, well, do you want food for your family and babies? And so silver
Yeah.
becomes a better option. The other thing, like you pointed out, that I'm really realizing is as we move towards more solar, more electric vehicles, they need silver in order to conduct that electricity. And are you going to buy gold or silver? Well, which one's a better price per ounce, right? And so
Right.
anyway, I just think the utility and the use of silver is going to increase, which, based on your discussion of it being rare, I think it's going to drive that price up over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's typically another thing that happens is when we're in a precious metals bull market, silver will outperform gold. And so we are in such a bull market. It started in 2016. Silver has outperformed gold. It hasn't reached its all-time highs though. And so that's another reason to favor silver when you're in a bull cycle. And even in the last 6 months, gold has been correcting from the all-time high it hit back in August, and it's been slowly going down. It's now down into the 1700s. It peaked almost at 2100, whereas silver has been bouncing in a sideways range, which is unusual also. And it implies tremendous strength in silver versus gold, because typically when gold goes down, silver goes down more. And so lately, gold has been going down, but silver has been going sideways. So I think it's a pretty good situation for silver. Obviously, there's no guarantees, but if you're interested in what the price levels are, $31 is kind of an important level. If it gets above $31, silver could run quite a bit. The next major resistance would be the all-time high of $49. So, watch that. I mean, not that we're encouraging people to trade, but that would be kind of a key level to watch, $31.
Yeah. Let's switch gears and talk about your website for a minute, because when I first introduced people to the group that I was buying from, the biggest question I was getting was like, what should I buy? What should I buy off the website? And I would tell them, listen, I really like the silver rounds. I've got some Liberty coins, but I would say I have more of the Buffalo rounds. So
Right.
Talk a little bit about maybe the pitfalls of being sucked into these rare coins by celebrity commercials versus just having the ounceage. Talk a little bit about that and your website.
This is probably the most important takeaway, other than why you should own precious metals, from this so far anyway, from this conversation is, and it's part of the reason that we formed our company 11 years ago. And that is that, a lot of folks are getting suckered into these rare and so-called collectible and commemorative coins, and through high pressure salespeople, boiler room phone banks, celebrity spokespeople. And the key thing that people, and just this is sort of the thing you have to think about. What is the melt value of the metal? There's gold and silver. There's a global market. There's a live price 5 days a week. At all times, what the silver price is, the base price. And so when you're looking at an item, you should make sure that you understand how much silver is in it and what is the price of silver versus what is the price that you're being asked to pay. And what ends up happening with these so-called collectibles is you have this neat, slabbed, hologrammed, graded coin that's a Morgan silver dollar from 1880. That's it's less than an ounce of silver in a Morgan silver dollar, but you're being told it's worth $1,000. I mean, so and yeah, it's probably worth more than the price of silver if it's truly rare and maybe a nice condition and that kind of thing. But is it worth 50 times the price of silver. Maybe it's worth twice. I don't know. But the point is, and when people go to sell those things back, they find out, wait a minute, I paid $1,000, silver went up. Now they're telling me they'll only pay me $300 to buy it back. You got to stay away from and it's a big problem. These people are getting our industry into trouble because the regulators see these people being ripped off with these high-priced so-called collectibles, and losing half their money immediately when they buy the wrong thing. So we only deal in bullion priced items. So we don't deal in the rare coins. There's a few items that for gifts like proof silver eagles and things like that you can find on our site. But we don't deal in the rare coins or commemorative or collectible market. And it's because we don't believe in it. And we strongly encourage, unless you're a true expert on coin collecting, that you avoid anything like that. Avoid anything that has a grade that's in a plastic case that you're being told has some collectible value. Because at the end of the day, especially in a bad scenario, you're not going to get more than the pretty much the value of the metal. Premiums fall over time, and they fall as a percentage in a bull market. So in terms of what to buy, we encourage people to focus on the lowest premium items, and including among the ones we have on our site. And as I mentioned, we only have the bullion type coins, bars, and rounds. But even within those, silver eagles, very popular coin, U.S. minted 1 ounce silver coin, but it's a very high premium compared to a 1 ounce silver bar. But they're both 1 ounce. Now, there is a slight more value when you sell it back. But, if it were me, I would buy rounds and bars. I wouldn't buy the coins. The only coins we have are the bullion ones, but they do have the higher premium, a little bit higher premium than the rounds or bars. So I would say 1 ounce silver bars, 1 ounce silver rounds, 10 ounce silver bars, 100 ounce silver bars. Those are kind of my favorites, from a value standpoint. You want to get a few, Canadian maple leaf coins are beautiful. They're a little higher premium, a couple more dollars, not a big deal. At the end of the day, as long as you avoid the collectibles, the supposedly rare graded stuff, you're going to be fine. But again, back to the point, understand the melt value of what you're buying, and then make sure that the premium is reasonable. And, lately, because of the shortages and because of the production bottlenecks and all the demand that we've been seeing, premiums have risen on the bullion items, but not dramatically, nothing like what you're talking about with the rare, so-called rare coins. So think about what the melt value is. And when people call us, we guide them, we explain, but I would say rounds and bars are your best deal.
Okay. Yeah. No, that melt value makes so much sense, right? Like, let's say that Elon Musk or just this last week, Volkswagen said, we actually now want to be known for electric vehicles and be better than Tesla. And they released 70 new models of electric vehicles. They're when it comes to the melt rate, they're not going to be like, oh, you have that collector's coin. Yeah, I guess we'll pay you more to melt that. They don't care. They want the best price per ounce.
Right.
That's a great point. Now I want to wrap up. So one last question, right? I've heard it said that silver is the poor man's gold. But as I look at the utility and the use of silver, more and more, I'm starting to feel like it's the smart man's gold, right? What do you think of that? Because there's just so many uses for silver now, especially with electric items becoming a hotter commodity.
Yeah, that's a good, that's saying, it has to do with the price differential. Silver was always more of the money of the people. It was the circulating currency. It was what was used. Gold was sort of held by the wealthy and big banks and secured in, big bar form in the vaults and that kind of thing. So I guess that's what it, where that came from. But they're both precious metals. Silver is the exciting one to me because of its utility on top of its investment and monetary characteristics. I think over time, the much more money will be made in silver. If that's, your main objective is to make a profit. Obviously, there's other reasons, insurance, financial insurance, something to have if there's a total breakdown. But if you're just looking from a price standpoint, I think silver will outperform gold by a pretty wide margin. And we'll see the ratios between the metals go back towards historical levels, maybe as low as 10-1, which would imply that today, it's $170 ounce silver versus $1,700 gold. So if gold doubles, silver will probably quadruple. And, so maybe that will become inherently the rich man's gold, will be silver for those that are holding a lot of silver. But again, I mean, that's not why you should, invest. Don't try. It's not about making a quick buck. But the other thing is, look at accumulating over time. You don't have to pick a moment and go all in. Do $100 a month. We have a monthly savings plan you can do. You can get on a schedule. You don't have to psych yourself out by trying to time the market. Just get on a disciplined schedule and periodically make a purchase instead of buying too much at once.
Yeah,